Welcome back to the Dadlife podcast. I want to start off by thanking everybody for taking the time to listen to this podcast. It is now available pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. And I also put an audio version on YouTube too, if you want to check that out. It's youtube.com/dadlifepodcast. So at the moment, I have the girls every other weekend, and I try and schedule my shows on the weekends when I don't have kids. And if you're a first-time listener, I am in 4 cover bands. So a lot of the time, I don't really have any free weekends because if I don't have the kids, I'm normally playing at least one of the Friday or Saturday nights. Once in a while, I do get a free weekend. And after I go through breakups, I seem to get really nervous as the weekend is approaching because I feel like I don't want to be alone. And I also don't really know what to do. So, for instance, this past weekend, I was feeling the exact same way. So, I made plans. I went out for dinner with an old friend that I haven't seen in, I don't know, 5 years maybe, at least. So that was good. And then Saturday, I spent the day with another friend. But as the time comes, the night, I'm worried about being alone, but when it comes, I'm just like so excited. I want to just sit on the couch. I want to relax, watch some shows. And then, I go to bed, wake up the next day, and it's all over. And I realized that I got nervous for no reason. And I don't know even why I get nervous. Maybe because that alone time on the weekends rarely happens. When I first moved out of the house about 3 years ago, every weekend when I didn't have the kids, I would just be really upset and think about them nonstop. I'd call them. I think I even asked if I could see them. And then after time, I kind of made myself not do that so they could get used to it. Things have gotten a lot easier for everybody over the last few years. And I still think about them, obviously, all the time, wondering what they're doing and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm okay now with that stuff. I touched on it a bit in the last podcast when I interviewed Ryan. But when I moved out of the house from my family, I moved in with a girlfriend. And she had a hard time with everything. And I felt like, because it seemed like she always had a problem with everything and me texting with my ex, and she really liked our alone time. So I would go downstairs and like sneak phone calls to the kids. Like I felt like I had to do that. So I would FaceTime them while she was upstairs and I wouldn't tell her. And it was the same thing when I'd get a text from their mom. I also said this in the last podcast where I was texting and I would be getting excited because how our relationship was becoming better and we were actually talking with each other. And my girlfriend at the time started making comments about how we text too much. So if I saw that I had a text from the girl's mom, I would literally take my phone and leave the room to read it and respond because I didn't want her to know. And I was avoiding a fight. And for the rest of our relationship, that's what I did. The girl's mom and I also didn't get divorced for, I guess it was last September, it became official. So it was about 3 years later. And my ex-girlfriend had the biggest problem with it. And when I first moved out, I didn't even think about it. Like, it literally never entered my mind. All I cared about was how to, just dealing with the situation, how the girls were upset and how I was upset. And she always used to make comments about how we're not divorced. we fought about it, and which made me care less because I didn't want to feel like I was being pressured into doing it. She got together with me knowing that she was fine with it in the beginning. She was fine with me still living at the house, and all of a sudden she wasn't. Which I understand the house thing, so I moved out with her. But I remember this one specific argument that we had about me not being divorced, and I just yelled, "It's just a piece of paper." Like, I honestly feel like being married doesn't change anything. And I got up for work in the morning. It was 4 a.m. I go in the kitchen, and there's a piece of paper on the kitchen table. And it's with her, she wrote me a note, and it started off with, "This is just a piece of paper," and just complaining about it. I crumpled up and I went in the bedroom and I threw it at her and I left. I was just so mad. How do you guys feel about being married or divorced? Like, do you think it changes anything? I put a poll on my Instagram story. I asked, do you think being married changes anything, or is it just a piece of paper? And a very interesting thing happened. I woke up the next day and I took a look at the poll and it said 50-50. And I took a closer look to see who voted, and no word of a lie, everybody that said it changes everything were all girls. And all the guys put just a piece of paper. So I posted the results, and then after that I got a couple more females voting that it was just a piece of paper. I also got a nice message from somebody. She said she answered, yes, it changes everything, but then she goes on to say, not in all cases, but it changes the mindset, especially for the woman. Women grow up with the Disney happily ever after mindset, even though they don't want to admit it or even don't know it. She goes on to say they usually think that things are going to be better, great, or that they're going to be more happy with a ring on the finger. And when they meet the reality after the marriage, it gets disappointing at some point. And when it's not what they think, it's more like, it's as bad as I thought. Nothing can save this. And then it goes wrong, and maybe it's been wrong for a long time. And then she says, this is what I think. Many people don't think that a relationship are going to change many times during the years, and they don't realize that you as a human need to work to evolve and understand that living with someone over time needs you to work to keep a relationship. I also got another comment from somebody. She says, the first time is meaningful. After that, it's just a piece of paper. When I read that, I thought, that is how I feel, because looking back, I think it was important when I first got married. And then I went back and looked at all the people that voted and looked at who I knew. And the girls that said that it was just a piece of paper, I know are divorced. I'd love to hear your comments. If you go to anchor.fm/dadlifepodcast, there's a link where you can leave me a voice message and I can include it in a future episode and I'll answer your question. You can also tweet me at dadlifepodcast1, or Facebook is dadlifepodcast1, or on Instagram is just dadlifepodcast. Thanks for listening, and I will see you again next Monday.